So welcome to the Food and Drink Summit. Today with Colum O'Sullivan, Director of Cully Sully, a beautiful food company in the lovely county of Cork. How are you doing, Colum?
Very well, thank you very much. Very well. Lovely to speak with you.
Angie, it's lovely for you to join us and we're delighted to have you. So Colum, tell us a bit about yourself and your background.
So we started Cully Sully in 2004, myself and my business partner, Colin Allen. So he was Colin Allen and I'm Colum O'Sullivan. So there were too many C's and A's and vowels and so on. So he was always called Cully by his family and I was always called Sully by my friends. So when we were starting up our business, he comes from Ballymaloe House in East Cork. So his granny would be Myrtle Allen and his aunt would be Dorina. And
very
so
nice, yes, so, indeed, I know
yeah,
it.
So we had a little office in the old grain store there, and people were saying, how are Cully and Sully or Sully and Cully or whatever getting on? So we said, look, would we call the business that? Now everyone told us after we decided to call the business Cully and Sully that we were daft, that the name was childish and whimsical, and that it would never work. But we couldn't think of anything better. The only other names we could think of were, names like Eleanor's Foods or the Granary Food Store, which is what my brother's business is called. But none of them ever really they didn't make us smile. And then one day we decided to, we did it a few times. But one day in particular, we set up a little kind of a stall in Merchant's Quay in Cork, which is kind of in between a Super Value and an M&S. And we just wrote all the different names that we have on a piece of paper, on a board, and we asked people what they thought. And Cully and Sully made people stop and think. They'd kind of go, Cully and Sully, that sounds a bit kind of daft. But they'd kind of smile, and you could see you could see it in their eyes. You could see a reaction, and that kind of kept going. And that's how Cully and Sully that's how the name started. But my background, I grew up in Cork, and I studied food business in University College Cork, which is a food science degree. I then went to work for Musgrave Group. I went in there on their graduate program, so the Musgrave who own Super Value, Centra, the Cash and Carries. Mm-hmm. And I spent 4 years there with them and then left to set up Cully and Sully in 2004.
Brilliant. And so how did the start of the company actually come about? Had you been in discussions with Colin, or how did it happen?
So I always wanted to set up a business. Ever since I was a child, I wanted a business. Some of my friends wanted to be pop stars. I still want to be a pop star. But some friends wanted to be, sports stars or whatever else. I wanted to be a businessman. I didn't know what a businessman was. My dad was a dentist, and my mum did have a business, but that started later on in life when we left home to go to school. So I was always looking at different ideas. And when I was in Musgrave Group, Musgrave at that time, I was there, I think, from 1999 to 2003. And there's a lot of stuff happening within the company. It was very entrepreneurial. And I kept looking at different ideas, and I was living by myself. I was living in Castleknock in Dublin. I was working in the Cash and Carry in Ballymun, and coming home by yourself every evening, to cook, and there's not much joy in that. And there was a Spar shop close to us, and Spar had a very limited selection of stuff. There wasn't an M&S close to us, and I was used to, my mum would have cooked for us and so on, and she loves food. So I was kind of going like, surely, bit of God, we can get something decent in a local Spar. And that was really the genesis of the idea. I was like, can we supply independent stores with high quality food? So then I approached Cull, who was my great friend and comes from Ballymaloe and obviously had a huge pedigree in food. And we went on this kind of path, this journey, which started really in June 2003. And I kind of called it the roller coaster ride. We kept having meetings. Every week we'd have a meeting. And we might meet you, and then we'd have a good meeting with you, and you'd say, well, you need to go and meet Tom and Jerry. We'd go meet Tom and Jerry, and then Jerry would say, well, you need to go and meet Paul and Dermot. And this thing just kind of started. And it brought us down the road of a method of cooking which didn't exist really in Ireland at the time, called sous vide, which is a French method of cooking, which translates into under vacuum, sous vide. Mm-hmm. And it brought us over to France, where we met a number of companies, and one of the companies there was a company called Fleury Michon. Fleury Michon is and still is an extraordinary company, and they make meals for a chef called Joël Robuchon. Robuchon is a 3-star Michelin chef, and we've got 1 3-star Michelin, and we've got I think if it was 2-star, 3-star Guibault's in Dublin, but in France a 3-star Michelin chef, as it is here, but it's a very, very serious thing. So for us to see a Joël Robuchon meal in Carrefour in France. It was extraordinary. So we
Brilliant.
approached them, and we wanted them to come and manufacture in Ireland. And they said to us, oh yeah, no problems. Yeah, we are interested in that. We know Ballymaloe. We like the fact that you know retail. This is interesting. And then one evening, just we were having dinner with the export director, a lovely man who's since deceased, called Jean-Claude Chauny. And Jean-Claude said to me, to study into what is the population of Ireland? And I said at the time it was 3.5 million, quite proudly. And he goes, it is impossible, impossible. And I said, what do you mean it's impossible? Like, we're Ireland, like, we're amazing and all this kind of stuff. And he said, it's too small. We are 60 million people. The UK is 65 million people. Germany is 60 million people. Spain is 60 million people. 4.5 million people. You can't build a factory for that. So they ended up starting to produce for us, which is a huge thing for us to get over in our heads because we wanted to produce ourselves. But actually, so we ended up starting this business and launching it in 2004. And we didn't own anything. We didn't own a factory. We didn't own a distribution center. We didn't own any equipment. Musgrave had given me my laptop. We had borrowed cars, and we worked from home. So we ended up kind of launching this kind of virtual company by accident in September 2004. And then in 2006, October 2006, we launched our soups, and they've become huge. I mean, we're most renowned for our soups. We'd be the biggest brand in the Republic of Ireland. We're the first or second brand, depending on whether on promotion or off promotion, in Tesco UK, in 3,000 Tesco UK stores. We went into Co-op in the UK, about 1,000 stores there a few months ago. We're in Deleuze in Belgium. We're in a lot of retailers around Paris. So we sell a lot of soups, all made in either Kilkenny or in Galway. And the business it's gone very, very well.
So you've taken the manufacturing back to Ireland, then, have you?
Yeah, well, so it's been a long story, and that's been probably the biggest challenge of our business has been the manufacturing. So we moved the manufacture of the pies back to Ireland in 2008. Because our Achilles heel was always people saying to us, oh, the pies are great and they taste great and they're wonderful, but there's always a but, but they're made in France. So it was interesting. We decided to bring the pies back. This was after we'd launched our soups. Our soups were made in Ireland, always. And we decided to bring the pies back to Ireland, and we thought, Irish made, and we actually increased the size. That was one of the problems that we had with the size. They were 300 grams. They're a little bit too small. They needed to be about 400 grams. But the French couldn't do a 400-gram pie. And so we brought them back, and it was extraordinary. It made zero difference to sales, absolutely none. And actually, it didn't really work for us. In hindsight, we probably should have left it with the French. The French manufacturing a prepared meal, a pie, is a very difficult thing to do because it's not like manufacturing, say, for example, a jam.
Yeah.
With a pie, you're using mince, you're using meats or chicken or whatever. You're using starches, be it potato or rice or pasta or whatever. There's pasta in a pie, but we were doing other meals as well. And there's a huge amount of technical knowledge in doing that and in giving it a shelf life. So that if you manufacture a pie today, it needs to be able to last without preservatives, for 10, 12 days. But our soups were always produced in Ireland, and for a short spell they were in the UK, but we produce all our soup now in the Republic of Ireland. Yeah,
absolutely brilliant. And one of the things that I've noticed is that obviously healthy food is becoming increasingly important. Did that influence your choice of products?
Yeah, I mean, we launched in 2004, right? And the landscape in 2004 was very different. I mean, even if you were, say, going into M&S, who was certainly at the time had been seen as, the higher end of food. This was before Tesco Finest, and so before Jamie Oliver did this thing with Sainsbury's and so on. And, even at that time, if you went into a supermarket, hydrogenated fats, preservatives, emulsifiers, all that kind of stuff were normal. We were adamant that we wouldn't use any of those things and that we would use this method of cooking, so we wouldn't have to use them. So, and we were unique. We were completely unique in doing that. And we were always insistent in not doing that. And it was very much following, I suppose, the ethos of Ballymaloe, which is very much about, home ingredients and using good ingredients and cooking them well. And it was extraordinary, the resistance that we found to that. You know, we had many people within the food industry just saying, like, why don't you just put some preservative into it and make it last longer? We're saying, like, you know, I don't want to eat food with preservatives in it. So, you know, and I can't, if we're going to be the face of the brand, you can't, a brand, I mean, and we've been most successful. We've been very successful with what we've done, but the value of what we've created is in the brand. And for a brand to work, you have to be true to it. And the brand is Cully and Sully, which is the two of us. So we need to be able to talk and stand over everything that we do. So, you know, what does healthy food mean? It means many different things, but to us, it means good ingredients, no preservatives, no things being used in processing aids or in the process of making the soup. You know, we use butter unashamedly. People will say, well, why don't you use a kind of a hydrogenated fat to reduce your fat content? But as we'd say, if you're frying off onions, you're making soup at home, you fry them off in butter. We use olive oil in some cases. You know, we use all fresh vegetables. I can't remember how many. I think I don't know how many times we fill Crow Park every year with vegetables. Like, but we use a huge amount of vegetables. And we follow the seasons. So, you know, we're at the moment we're not quite back into Irish veg yet, but we'll soon be back into Irish veg. So, you know, in terms of health, yes, we would say that our soups are very healthy. I mean, we have a huge number of doctors who would recommend our soup to people, particularly people who are sick, cancer patients who have a problem swallowing, and that's a lovely endorsement that independent people like that who know their stuff will recommend it. So, and you know, like we give it to our kids and so on. So yeah,
it's absolutely brilliant, and it actually leads me very well to my next question, because I was going to ask you what are the challenges you're facing. I suppose that's a challenge in itself. You know, not putting hydrogenated fats, etc., and there's a cost implication there, and then obviously trying to get retailers to accept your brand when there's a wee bit higher in price. I'm sure that's been a challenge.
Yeah, that has been a challenge over the years, and even, you know, things like, say, not last summer, but the summer before last, when we had the big drought. So, you know, the price of ingredients went bananas, went up through the roof, and price of butter went up through the roof, and everything. I mean, it was extraordinary. Like, I think carrots and onions like nearly doubled in price. And you know, we're saying to the retailer, we need to pass on a price increase, and they're saying, like, you know, no. So, and you know, in fairness, I understand it from their perspective, because they got to keep their prices down for their consumers. But at the same time, you know, you're the one in the middle getting squeezed. So there is a fine balance between, you know, how all of that works. But you got to stick to your guns. You know, I think you could damage the brand. If you damage the brand, it's like a relationship. You know, if you and I are friends, and you think I'm something and I'm not, well, then you're not going to buy me again. So it is a fight. You've got to fight for it the whole time. You know, one of the challenges that we face the whole time is, because we're using fresh ingredients, a carrot now is different to a carrot in September, is different to a carrot in December. So our recipes have got to change the whole time. Peas are different throughout the year, but a person expects their pea soup or their tomato soup or whatever to taste exactly the same. So we're constantly altering the recipes and so on, and working with our staff to do that. And that's tricky. But we've got amazing teams in Kilkenny and in Galway who do that.
Brilliant. And you know, you've mentioned some of the bigger stores there. How do you actually go about getting a product, especially like a new product like yourselves, into the bigger stores? You mentioned Tesco, maybe Dunnes stores, etc. How do you do that? I'm sure our viewers would be delighted to hear.
Yeah, I don't think there's any one way. I think it depends. I think, you know, if you have something that they want, they'll be after you very quickly. You know, retailers, you know, and people give out about them and all this kind of stuff, but retailers are actually incredibly responsive to things. If they see something that they think is going to sell, they'll get on to you very quickly. So, for example, with us, you know, we launched with one retailer, and we had two other retailers onto us very, very quickly. You know, I suppose we got our profile into the newspapers here, and they saw that. We got ourselves into high-end stores, independent stores. They saw that. They saw the passion, the energy that we were putting in behind the brand, and they wanted a bit of that in their stores. So that was how that works, and we built it up. But then, you know, you say, well, okay, you know, if you say to yourself, okay, you can do that, you're brilliant at that. Well, then we tried to go and do it in the UK, and we were years knocking on doors over there, years, and we couldn't get in. And they were saying to us, oh, you know, your brand won't work. And there's always some sort of an excuse. And I always put it back to, well, if an English manufacturer was trying to come into Ireland, you know, if the Irish buyer is happy with what he has or she has, it's going to be difficult to penetrate that. So you've got to try and you've got to be different. You know, as people say, you know, a supermarket shelf, you know, it's not elastic. It's a certain amount of space. And you know, if, for example, so you say somebody in Belfast launches a soup, well, they're going to take one of my soups away. So are they going to be giving the retailer the same margin that I'm giving them? Because if they're giving less margin than I'm giving, because they'll be saying, well, I'm small, I can't get the same margin as Cully and Sully because they're bigger. Well, the retailer is going to say, well, why, you know, I'm going to need to sell 2 of your soups for every one of Cully and Sully's. So there's a lot of different things there. You know, at the same time, if the PR is big enough of the new brand, they will list you. So there's a lot of stuff there, but you always have to see it from the retailer's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the retailer, you know, I mean, you're in large organizations, there can be hundreds of buyers in some of these retailers, and they're incentivized, you know, and they have targets and bonuses and all this kind of stuff. And you got to try and understand from their perspective, you know, what's going to make them want you in there. And that's really it. And I say that, you know, with all my knowledge, and yet there's still plenty of retailers in the UK that we're still not in, and we're trying to get into. There's also an element of time. I think one of the things to do, and that's a very important thing to do, is to, you know, if a retailer says no, you say, you know, no problems, thank you very much, and send them a Valentine's Day present, send them a Christmas present. You know, not like a big and expensive, but a box of chocolates, or make them something. You know, make them something nice, and stay on their radar. The reality is that buyer will probably move to another section. They tend to move around quite a bit, but try and build that relationship. But at the same time, you know, you have to be true to yourself. Do you have something unique? You know, people think that, oh, I've got the best brown bread ever. You know, really, is it really the best brown bread ever? Am I really going to change to that brown bread? So that's, you know, they're all the questions you got to be honest with yourself about.
My takeaway from this is that your personality will actually get you into those. I'll tell you, and your persistence.
Sometimes it might keep me out of them.
I doubt that very much, Colum. So, Colum, are trade events important for a business like yourselves? Or would that not be something you'd be involved in?
I think that trade events are important, but I wouldn't rate them as highly as being in key stores. So, you know, again, I should just say, for example, I'll just talk about Ireland. And, you know, I remember somebody saying to me once, it was one of the guys in Super Quinn, and he said, if you can penetrate with Super Quinn Blackrock, Super Quinn in Sutton, which is the original Super Quinn, Tesco in Tesco Marion, Dunn's Corners Court, Super Value in Churchtown, and Super Value Dunes Grange. If you get those stores working, the rest will follow, right? You know, so there's an element, there's this triangular effect. And, you know, so for example, and again, there'll be other stores out there that people watch, that they're in the Irish Times magazine, or they're in the UK Good Housekeeping magazine, or whatever. So, you know, again, if you want England to work, there's stores you got to make work in London. All the buyers go into Harrods, and they go into Fortnum and Mason, and they want to see what's in there. And a lot of stuff in there is far too expensive for it to work in a normal retailer. But they're the places you need to be seen, and you need to create this kind of thing for the buyer that, you know, I want that. Could that work in my store?
Yes, it's more about going into the sort of the flagship stores rather than the trade events, you're right?
I think so. I think trade events, you know, I suppose, look, I mean, I don't know. My experience of trade events, we went to a lot of them. You do meet buyers there, but they're meeting so many people. I'm not sure it can be a little bit of a false environment. They might feel under pressure from you. I'm definitely not saying they're a bad thing. I'm not saying that for a second. But I would say things like, you know, if say, for example, I had $5 grand to spend, and I had a choice of spending $5 grand on going to an electric picnic, or I had $5 grand on going to the biggest trade fair in Ireland, I'd go to electric picnic, because I can be sure the buyers will be there, or else there'll be colleagues of the buyers there, or family of the buyers there. And if I can feed them and entertain them, well, that's going to get back to the buyer.
That's brilliant. That's actually brilliant advice. That's honestly really good. Thank you. In terms of the food industry in Ireland, is it growing? What's happening?
I think we're at a time. There's a huge amount of change. There's never been so much change. Not just now, but the last couple of years. you know, driven largely by the discounters. You know, they have a huge market share down here now, which has put all the other retailers under pressure. I think that it's made, not having Superquinn down here for us is a huge loss. They were a very small part of the Irish retail scene. They were only about 8% of the market, but they were where small companies started. And Fergal Quinn, you know, was an amazing advocate of small business. Small business, food businesses have to start somewhere. The reality is you start, you know, in a couple of stores and you get it going. I think making that thing happen now is quite difficult. You know, for me, so against that landscape, for me, anybody starting a food business now really needs to be starting it in a way that's going to look into export very, very, very quickly. So, for example, I look at a company like Strong Roots, Sam Dennigan's business. You know, frozen has, you know, started in Ireland really well, but very quickly got off the island of Ireland very successfully as in America now and so on. So, you know, that's the route to market I think you have to go now. You know, again, you look at the scale. So if you take Tesco's Republic of Ireland, and I remember clearly the day that we got into Tesco's ROI, it was around 2009, I think it was. It was quite a bit after we launched our business. And you know, we were delighted. But Tesco's Republic of Ireland is 120 stores. We're in 3,000 Tesco's in the UK. You know, the scale of that, and it's nearly the same amount of work to supply Tesco's UK in terms of paperwork and whatever else as it is Tesco ROI. But in terms of you know, customer demand is changing hugely. The millennials are driving huge change in terms of health, in terms of snacking, in terms of meat-free. You know, meat-free is an area that's growing hugely, and there's huge appetite from the supermarket buyers for good meat-free products. That's a huge area that will continue to grow. And you know, there are some good products in there, but we definitely haven't seen the brilliant products that are going to be there in years to come. I think making it easy for people to eat themselves and feed their families healthily is an area which is going to grow, definitely.
Yeah, and it's definitely becoming more important, and it's only going one way, and it's an upward trajectory. In terms of, and you've answered this partially anyway, in terms of using local producers and provenance, do you find that very important in your business?
I think again, it depends on your brand. So if you're a brand that purports to be about provenance and so on, and that's a very important thing. Brands are very important to millennials. They want to get behind them. They want to understand them. But you got to be true to your brand. So if your brand is about provenance and stuff, well then you better be on it, because they're going to know. They're going to be able to Google it and find the answer and so on. And if you're not true to what you say, well then your brand is gone. But I think but for me, provenance is vital. I mean, it's what you're putting into your body. It's what you're putting into your children's bodies. You know, I get, and again, you know, when we started our business, we did lots of in-store demonstrations. You got to remember, a lot of people out there, the majority of people are shopping on a budget, and they got to feed, you know, somebody who's a large family or whatever, and they haven't got much money, and they, unfortunately, in a lot of cases, food is fuel, and that's difficult. But you know, I think for a new business trying to start in that market is very difficult. That's about, you know, low cost and so on. To me, the opportunities, particularly, you know, in health, in meat reduction and so on, is going to be in, you know, really, really good quality products with provenance, and then tell a story that makes people feel good about themselves.
Yeah. And on that note, are you expanding your range, or?
Yeah, we're constantly trying to look at different things. So, like, you know, for example, like 2 years ago, we launched our broths, and you know, our broths I'm not trying to bang on about them, but they're an amazing product. You know, the bones are, they're the Cully Group, who are an amazing company in Ireland. They roast all the bones for 24 hours. You know, it's extraordinary, and they got like, you can have whatever kind of bone you want, you know, from whatever animal, whatever age. And then we make the broths, you know, from that base, so they're a proper bone broth. But again, the uptake in them, you know, has been very slow. You know, they're there and they're nice and they're good products. But getting, you know, if you take our soups, for example, you know, we sell a soup every 2.3 seconds. You know, it's a lot of
unbelievable.
Soup. Yeah, so every 2.3 seconds, all day, all year, there's a soup being sold somewhere. So it's, you know, getting getting a new product to reach that level is always very hard, but you got to keep trying, and MPD is really important. We're trying to do a lot more stuff with seasonal things. So we do have a seasonal soup, and we're trying to make that more local now as well. Maybe with some beetroot, and we're doing a seasonal squash soup. We're looking at the idea of risottos, but again, you know, risotto is a relatively small market, but a risotto as a meal is fantastic. It can be vegetarian, it can be delicious, it can be healthy, and it can be quick. But again, people have a thing about risottos, but you know, we're going to try. So we're the whole time looking at things, but again, you have to try and achieve that rate of sale with the supermarkets. So it's not easy, but we're constantly trying.
Brilliant. And have you had any help from like government agencies, particularly when you're going to Britain or, you know, you're expanding? What help have you had?
I mean, Board B are an amazing organisation for us, and they've been hugely helpful in France and in the UK with us. They've extraordinary teams. Always, I mean, I always said that they're the best of all the organisations. You know, Enterprise Ireland are very good as well. We haven't had as many dealings with them, but certainly Board B, you know, if you put your hand up and you ask for something, they will deliver it. You know, they really are very good. But really, you know, at our stage in life, we'll probably go off and get the information ourselves, and you know your way around the market, and you can get that information yourself most of the time. But certainly, Board B are excellent.
Brilliant. And in terms of where people can get your products, Colum, where are they available? You've mentioned some of them. This is your chance to tell me where we can get them.
So Tesco Northern Ireland have them. Dunn's Northern Ireland have them. Super Value, I know some Super Values. I haven't been up now for a couple of months, but some Super Values have them, some don't. But Tesco's are probably your best bet. Unfortunately, we're not in Sainsbury's, and we're not in Little or Aldi.
Just yet.
Just yet.
and can you buy them on your website as well?
No, that's kind of slightly one of, I'm not sure, I wouldn't say Achilles' heel, but our difficulty is we've got to maintain the chill chain. So we can't post them to you chilled. We'd love to be able to post them to you chilled, but unfortunately we can't do that. We'd love to develop some sort of an online business. I mean, you know, online is what it's all about, particularly at the moment. But no, we can't. It doesn't work. You know, obviously you can buy them online through Tesco.ie or whatever, or Tesco.co.uk. But and we do sell a lot through Tesco. I think about 8% of our sales in Tesco UK go through their online portal. But we can't send anything direct from our
again. Maybe that's just yet. That could be coming.
Who knows? We have seen packaging inventions and stuff, but nothing yet. But you never know. Hopefully, at some stage.
Okay, Colum, brilliant. Would you like to give our viewers any hints or tips or common mistakes that you've made, or anything that at all that will help?
Okay, so we've made plenty of mistakes. I suppose there's so much stuff to say. I think from what I've said already, I would say one of the most important things is talking to people. You know, you got to keep talking to people. People when they're starting their business love to get market research reports and kind of, you know, X% of the market says this and whatever else it is. Go out and chat to people in the stores, and they're only too delighted to talk to you. And have the meetings, and you have a business plan. You're updating the whole time. That's alive. It's a living, breathing document. That's one thing. Second thing I would say is, you know, for me, brand is fantastic. You know, it differentiates you from everybody else. It's who you are. But I think that a certain person, you know, there's a certain skill that we didn't have, and I didn't even know what a brand was. And we kind of fell into it, and we kind of, you know, became it or something. I don't know how it all kind of just happened in a way. We've learned a huge amount about branding, and it's a fascinating topic, and it's something that it's hard to teach it. You really have to experience it. But I think the idea of building a brand, I mean, you know, and what we are, I mean, we don't own really anything physical. I mean, we are a brand. So building that brand and staying true to that brand is very important. I think the other thing is obviously staying true to your product. A lot of people start food businesses, and they've got a great idea, and you know, they're passionate and so on, and they start delivering to 10 shops or 20 shops, And then they got to scale, because you're not going to make any money delivering to 20 shops or even 50 shops. You got to scale, right? You've got to scale. And the thing is keeping your product authenticity when you scale from 50 shops to 1,000 shops. And that's the key. And so many businesses fall at that. And if your product can't scale, and you got to be true to yourself, if it can't scale exactly at the same quality, and I mean, I really do mean that, it has to be exactly the same thing, but then it ain't going to work. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the retailer, when you go and sit with the retailer, they'll know that. They'll know if something can scale or not. And that's a very important thing. I think the other thing as well is, you got to enjoy it in passion. People buy from people, and if you're passionate and you love what you do, they're going to be more interested in dealing with you. So be passionate and, be polite and all that kind of stuff. And it's a long road. There are plenty of knocks in the face and whatever. We got plenty of them. But you just got to get yourself up and dust yourself down and drive on,
I think you most definitely have that personality and tenacity. It
Thank
shines through. It shines through. And lastly, if you'll indulge me, what's the future for Cully and Sully?
The future for us, really for us, what we would love to do, Ireland and England are the two big soup markets, really, for fresh soup. There's a little bit in France, and we're there, a little bit in Germany and so on, but really it's Ireland and the UK. So really for us, we're in everywhere in Ireland, every single corner store, every soup, every filling station. You won't find a store. I'm not saying that in an arrogant way, but we're in pretty much every store here. We'd love to do the exact same thing in the UK. We want to get into that. We want to get into Sainsbury's. We want to get into Waitrose. We want to get into the rest of the co-ops. We believe our soup is very different. It's a smooth soup. It's not a chunky soup. It's in a container that you can eat out of. It's very much a soup, kind of on the go. It's a huge authenticity in terms of ingredients. In terms of manufacturing time and making our soups, it's a long time, because we saute off the veg, we reduce down the soup, and it's made the same way you make it at home. So we really want to get into all the rest of the stores. That's really what we'd love to do. Yes, there's a lot of growth left there still.
Well, Colum, that was absolutely brilliant, and
Thank you.
we wish you all the best with Cully and Sully in the future. And it was a pleasure having your company today.
And a pleasure to speak with you too. And thank you very much. I really enjoyed that.
I did too. Thanks very much, Colum.